Hello and welcome to episode 254 of my podcast all about knitting and crochet and my yarn shop here in Wiesbaden, Germany. I'm Kiko and today is November 25th, 2024. Today I'm actually wearing two new things that I'm wearing for the very first time. And one of them I haven't even shown you as a finished object, and that's the Construct Compagne by Woolly Wormhead's husband, and I forgot to write down his name. His name is Tom something, I think, but it's all on my it's on my project page on Ravelry, and right now the pattern has not been released yet, but it should be released very soon. So as soon as that happens, there will be a link on my project page, and then you can link through to the pattern and you can buy it if you want to knit a cowl like this or a scarf like this. You can also knit this as a scarf pattern, then you don't start with a provisional cast on and you don't have to sew it together. So one of the reasons I'm already wearing it without first showing it as a finished object is the fact that I have already washed it. I usually like to show my finished objects first without having washed them, so unwashed, so you see what they look like when they come off the needle. And then the week after, I usually show them washed, so you can see a difference if there is a difference. But with this one, I washed it before I seamed it together because then it dried quicker. So I could just lay it flat to dry and then I sewed it together. And this way I was finished a bit quicker because the deadline had already passed. And so I wanted to finish as quickly as possible. Now let me try and find the seam. Because it's a Kitchener stitch seam, it's not supposed to be visible, but I do see that the edge is slightly uneven from weaving in the ends. So I know that this line in between the color blocks is the seam that I Kitchener stitched together, but it doesn't really look a lot different from all the other places where these color blocks start and stop. It's a very nice pattern. It's a slip stitch pattern, so it's not difficult to knit. You only ever knit with one color. You have to be able to do short rows, and you must not be confused if a short row and a color change come together. But it's really well explained in the pattern, so it's not hard to do. Most of the time you only slip one stitch, so you don't really see a float. The only floats that are visible is where you slip 3 stitches at a time. Yeah, so it's not very hard to do. There is a hat pattern by Woolly Wormhead that goes with, that has sort of the same pattern. I haven't knit the hat yet, but if you have the hat, then maybe it'll be nice to get the same pattern as a cowl. Okay, so that's that. And then the dress. So that, it's called Mamaki dress, but it's really a tunic. It's like a long pullover. It's not really a dress. And that one I showed you last week as a finished object. So you saw what it looked like after I cast off. Now it has been washed, but I did not really block it. I just laid it flat to dry. I did not really want to change a lot in the sort of appearance. There is no pattern that needed blocking. The one thing that I noticed after it was completely dry and I put it on is that the sleeves are very short. So I was trying to save yarn. I only had the 500 grams of yarn that I bought in Hamburg at the what's Fabrik in German? It's not Fabrik. It's the place where they make yarns, where they produce yarns. Anyway, so I had this yarn. I picked out the different strands. So it's a very unique yarn that I chose back then. And I only had the 500 grams. And originally I wanted to knit a pullover. And I don't know why I thought I could make a whole dress out of 500 grams, but I tried. And because I was trying to save yarn, the sleeves are fairly tight. I made them a bit too short, thinking they might lengthen after washing. And I also knit the whole dress a lot tighter than the pattern calls for. But here I'm happy with it. It's not too tight. It's fairly loose. So I'm really happy that I did the changes I made here so that I did get a bit more length. The sleeve could have been a bit longer, but I decided instead of always pulling on it and trying to make it long sleeves, I decided I would just exact them as 3/4 sleeves or bracelet length or whatever that's called. And because they're not really long, it gives me a chance to wear these wrist warmers. And these are very small, easy wrist warmers that I knit when I practiced using the tiny circular needles. So all I did is cast on stitches. I knit one color repeat of the yarn and then cast off and did the second one. And I thought with the yellow and orange and also with the black, it does go well with the dress. So if I put them on, I am warm, even though the sleeves aren't that long, and I'm really quite happy with the look. And as I promised last week, I'm going to step on my chair so you can see the full length of the tunic. So I think this is a nice tunic length. I think to be called a dress, it should be at least this long, but it could also be called a mini dress. Yeah, and as you see, it's fairly wide down here, so I have no problems when I'm walking or sitting down. Nothing is too tight. I'm really glad that I did the stretchy bind off that I did, so everything is nice and loose down here. And I really enjoy wearing the dress. As far as I remember, most of the yarn should be wool. So as I said, it's 6 different strands, but it was 5 different ones. One strand I used twice. And most of the material is wool, but there might be a little either Angora or maybe even cashmere in there. I don't really remember. It's such a long time ago that I picked the yarn. But it's very nice next to skin. It's soft. I like the way the colors are all mixed together. And that was the reason I didn't put any pattern in, which is rather unusual for me. But I'm really happy with the way this pullover or tunic looks now. And because of all the orange, I thought I could also wear this cowl today with the tunic. And with the cowl, it's sort of stands on itself a little bit because of the garter stitch and the slip stitches. And if you're outside and cold, you could also pull it up a little bit, or you could put the jacket around or something. But I thought for wearing inside, and especially if I want to stress the orange, I can just flip the gray part inside. You could also flip it out if you wanted to stress the gray, and then it would be possible to maybe pull this part out a little bit as well. And if you wear it like this, you could stress the gray more. So there's many ways to wear this little cowl. And I think if you knit the longer version, so it's long enough to wear doubled, it's even easier to style the colors any way you like. Okay, so that's it for what I'm wearing. And what I'm wearing already included my first finished object, but I have actually 2 more finished objects today. And this is actually the youngest or the newest of my finished projects, and the oldest is my spiral granny square. So I invented a way to do a spiral granny square, so you don't have to finish a round and start a new round, but you can just go round and round and round. And I filmed a little tutorial video on how to do it if you want to have a look at that, if you haven't done so already. And then I started off with leftover yarns in bright colors and started my spiral square. And when I finished all the leftover yarns that sort of had these colors, it wasn't big enough, so I chose one ball of Hundertwasser yarn, so a Hundertwasser colorway, and I crocheted the whole ball into the square. And then I picked a bright colored Opal Abo ball of yarn, so the subscription yarn, and I still felt it wasn't big enough, so I picked one more ball of yarn to add to the square. I'll show that in a minute. But then I decided this is big enough, and it can either be a nice big baby blanket, or I can fold it and wear it as a triangular scarf, which was my first idea. That's the reason I started this. And as a triangular shawl, it's big enough, but it's not really very big. And it's still rather, it's a bit stiff, even though I tried to crochet it loosely, and I used a bigger needle than I usually use with this yarn. But what I want to do with this, this has not been washed yet or blocked. So I want to wash it and then really block it as much as I can to open up the stitches, so it'll be a bit more airy and light and maybe drape nicer and just be bigger. And I usually take pictures before and after blocking, and I usually post them on Ravelry. So if you're interested in that, you should be able to see if the square grew with the blocking or didn't. It should be you should be able to see it there. And the last color that I chose to put into the square was this one. I think I showed it last week. It's the series Lieblingsplatz Favorite Spot. And I don't think I've shown the colors yet, so I thought I'll quickly show them to you today. And now that we're in autumn and going towards winter, I keep getting new yarns and new colors. So I think I'll be able to show you a new yarn or a new color series every week until the end of the year. So this is Favorite Spot, and this colorway is the it's like a hammock. And then we have a nice blue color, which is a valley in the mountains, something like that. And we have a gray yarn, which is a tent in the snow. So this would never be my favorite spot to be. I would never spend a snowy day, or I would never put up a tent in the snow, but the yarn is very nice. Then we have a colorway which is quite close to the one that I used. It's just a bit more yellow, a bit lighter, and that's the A Bench in the Forest. I love being in the forest, so that's really nice. Then we have the garden place, a spot in the garden. Also very nice colors with the turquoise. And this, I think, is my sister's favorite colorway. And this is not really a spot anywhere, but this is a little dog, and it says, "I'm always with you. I'm always coming with you." So that's really nice because my sister loves dogs and she loves the color purple, so that's perfect. And then I think my favorite color in this series is probably this one, which is a fireplace with a view. I love fireplaces, so that's also very nice. And it's a beautiful mix, I think, of pink and orange and little blue, and very nice. I'm not quite sure whether I will make something with it or not, maybe. And this is actually a colorway that I have already knit with, but it wasn't with the series, but it was when it was part of the Opal Abo, of the subscription. And this is another spot that's not really a place somewhere, but this is a cat, and it says sun bath tub. So any place that's in the sun, cats like to lounge and sleep. So that's also very nice. And when it was part of the subscription and I was knitting the pattern battle with this color, I knit these fingerless mitts that have lots and lots of beads already in the pattern. It wasn't my idea, it was part of the pattern. And I couldn't decide which color beads to use, so I used this color for this mitt, and then the other color doesn't really show very well on camera, but they are different, and I still think both colors of beads really work well with the yarn. So I'm very happy to have two different mittens with lots and lots and lots of beads. Yeah, so that was quickly this not very new, but a bit new series of colors by Opal. And yeah, that was the second finished object, but I have a third one, and that's the hat Cousteau from this beautiful book, Die Masche und das Meer, Stitches and the Ocean. And it has these this brioche pattern hat in the book. And in the book, the hats are either a solid color or stripes, like here and here. And they have a folded up brim. And in the pattern, it says to do a round of purl stitches to show where you fold it. But I didn't do it. I couldn't see that in the pictures. And if you knit that, you have to make sure that the brim always folds at that spot, which makes it a lot harder, I think, to knit a perfect fit. And it also means that you always fold it in the same direction and not the other, which is okay if you have a single color hat. But because I used a 2-color brioche pattern, I wanted to be able to wear the hat both ways round. So not only did I not do the purl round, I also changed the decreases in such a way that they look the same on the inside and the outside. I learned that from the Sockematician, Nathan Taylor's book, Double Knit Brioche. Teaches you how to do increases and decreases and other patterns that look the same on both sides, so you always have reversible pieces. So this is the way I knit the hat. I always had the light color on the outside and then the black on the inside, and this is what the hat looks like worn. It's quite well, it sort of fits me perfectly, but it's a bit loose, so it's not too big for me, but it's rather big. I could wear it if I wanted, if those were my colors, but I think it's also big enough for my brother-in-law to wear, and I plan to give this to him as a Christmas present. So for me, the brim is quite wide, which I love, so that the ears are really warm, but you could also make it a bit smaller and then just push it up a little bit. Or what they do in the books, some of the pictures, it looks as if they folded it twice. And then if you wear it like, maybe like this, then sometimes they don't cover the ears and they wear it like this. And that looks funny too, I think. Don't think my brother-in-law is going to wear it like this, but it is a possibility. And it means you can have different looks with the same hat. And then the edge here looks different if you fold it twice. But it's also possible just to have the one fold. Yeah, so these are my 3 finished objects for today. Then on to works in progress. And I start as usual with the socks. And I picked up a sock that I haven't worked on in quite a while. And that's the Bellflower sock. And I brought the first finished one just to remind you what it looks like. It has these nice bellflowers round the leg and also on the top of the foot. And I continued on the second one. This is a toe-up sock, so I finished 2 of the flowers and I've started the gusset increases, very small only, so you can't see a lot, but when the gusset increases get bigger, there is a bit of a lace pattern in the gusset increases, which I think is quite interesting. It's rather unusual, but this is a Sock Madness bonus pattern, so you have to expect the unusual. And the other sock I continued knitting on is her sock from my sock couple. I finished the leg, knit the heel, and I'm now on the foot, and still very happy with that. This is also the second sock of that pair, so this is a perfect project to carry around because it's light and it's easy. I don't have to think a lot about it. Now that the heel is done, I don't have to pay attention a lot. Just make sure to not knit too long. But as this is a second sock, I know exactly how many rounds I want to do, so that's really easy. The next project out of sock yarn, small project, is the gnome that I started knitting the week before last. So I showed it as a new project last week, and it's the gnome Nori from Sarah Shearer's book, The Gnomes of the Grimblewoods, I think is the English title. And she's doing a knit along in November for this one. And last week I showed you the hat, and last week after the video I knit the body. And that was basically all I wanted to do last week. And I wanted to leave the beard, the arms, legs, and the nose and the pockets, because this is one of the gnomes with pockets. I wanted to do them this week, but then I had to go on just a little bit because some weeks ago already I bought this glitter yarn in a shop nearby, and it's a very thin thread that sort of sparkles. I don't know why it looks like 2 threads at the moment. So it's very thin. This little thing has 1,000 meters of yarn on it, so I could knit 2 pairs of socks. I could turn 2 full balls of sock yarn into a glitter yarn by using this with the yarn. And I really wanted to start trying to knit this to see what it looks like, but I'm not knitting socks for myself at the moment, so I didn't know what to use it for. And then I thought, well, the gnome can have a glittery beard. That'd be really fun. So I used some light gray leftover alpaca sock yarn, and I held it double with this silver glitter yarn. And I knit the beard, and I really love the way this looks. So I'm not quite sure how well you can see the glittering yarn on camera. It's not very bright, it's not very obvious, it's not too in your face or anything, but it's just a nice little sparkle in between the yarn. So I'm really happy with how it looks. And I'm also very happy with how it feels, because that was the second thing I wanted to check out, is whether or not it scratches. Because sometimes if you have a glitter yarn, it can be a little bit uncomfortable next to skin. But with this one, probably because it's so thin, you don't really notice it at all. And even with the soft alpaca sock yarn, it's no problem at all. And yeah, so I was really happy to have something small to knit that I can try this yarn with. And now Nori has a beard that I still need to sew on. The nose will not get the glitter yarn. The hands probably won't get it either. So yeah, I hope to finish all the little pieces this week and put them together so that I can show you a finished gnome next week. And the last small project with sock yarn is the current pattern battle, where everybody taking part uses the same color from the Opal Abo, from the subscription, but everybody knits a different pattern. And I picked the Secret Cove Cowl by Romy Hill, and I'm really enjoying this. It's a very easy knit so far. Don't have to think a lot, but still there are a few things happening. It's not as boring as just only knitting stockinette. I've almost finished the 5th band of these stockinette parts with double amount of stitches. There'll be a 5th one, and after that I'll do the short rows. That's when it stops being such a mindless knit, and I'll have to check the pattern again. And after the short rows there'll be a knitted on lace edge that I'm really looking forward to. Haven't picked up beads for the lace edging yet, so I'm still not 100% sure I will be using beads, but I would love to. So we'll see about that. That brings me to the bigger projects, and I'll start with the Vinahop pullover. It's another pattern by Nicolor, the designer who designed this dress tunic. And again, this is a maximum freedom pattern where you start in the back of the neck. And this is basically your gauge swatch. You can see whether you like the fabric you're getting. And once you reach a certain size, then you cast on more stitches and you start knitting in the round. And I decided to do a different knit purl pattern every other 10 round band. And I continued knitting on the second sleeve, and I almost finished. So I'm into the last pattern. So I'm somewhere here. So after that, I have to do 10 more rounds of stockinette and then the ribbing. And I'll finally have the second sleeve done, and I can continue knitting on the front and back. So really enjoying this a lot. Looking forward to the finished project very much. And the other pullover I'm knitting, I'm still enjoying the process a lot, because there's still a lot of knitting to be done. That was another new project last week, and it's the Arctic pullover from Arctic Knits. I showed the book last week, and I explained about the yarn, which is a German undyed, unprocessed yarn that I have 4 colors of: light gray, white, dark gray, and this light brown. And I told you that there's a white stitch up here in the gray that you can hardly see. But now I have the opposite. I have a light gray pattern on the white. And I think because the pattern is a bit bigger, you can actually see something. You can't see very clearly, but it is visible a little bit. This part actually has all 4 colors in it. So it starts off with the white and the light brown. And then you have light gray and the dark gray. And I think this is the bit where there were most of the 3 color rounds. So that took quite a bit of time. These are my floats. With the rustic yarn, it's really easy to do the color work because the yarn sort of stays where you put it. It doesn't slip around or something. I've now done the last increase round. So this is the full number of stitches that I'm going to have for the whole yoke. I hope it's big enough. I went sort of for the smaller size than I could have done. I was thinking about two of the sizes, and I went for the smaller one. I hope it's not being too small, but because the yoke is really deep, I didn't want too many stitches. So we'll see whether it fits or not. And I also started the next pattern, which is again a white and light gray, so difficult to see. And in the middle of this pattern, there will be one more 3-color round. But after that, it'll only be 2 colors at a time for the rest of the yoke. I still enjoy knitting this a lot. And it's quite a different feel with this rustic yarn. I'm not using things like that a lot. But every time I pick it up, I'm quite surprised how much I enjoy knitting this. At the moment, I only knit this in my shop because it's not a portable project if you have 400-gram balls hanging off of your project. But once I finish the yoke, I will only be using the light gray, and then the project itself will be bigger. But I feel as long as there's only one ball of yarn hanging off of it, it's still fairly portable. I probably wouldn't be knitting this while waiting in line at the post office, but I might take it with me on the bus or in the car or something like that. So these are the pullovers. That brings me to the Go Dynamo Shawl by Stephen West, which is not a mystery anymore. I continued knitting the Clue 4, and I finished the second repeat of these tiny Noops Snups pattern with the mohair held double with the contrast color. And I started the second repeat of this slip stitch pattern where I switched the main color to a solid turquoise to make sure that the slip stitch pattern is visible and discernible. And I expect that once I finish this bit of pattern, there will probably be another decrease row the way it was after this one, because the last repeat of these little knops, that looks really small if you look at the pictures. So that should work out really quickly. And still enjoying the many colors that I've brought together in this shawl. I am really looking forward to the finished object, and this is definitely a project where I will not wash the project before showing it to you. So whenever I finish the knitting, whether it's this week or next week, I will show it to you as a finished object, unwashed, and then I'll take pictures, I'll wash and block it, and then I'll show it to you and wear it after it's been washed and blocked. And I'm pretty sure there'll be quite a difference in the appearance of the shawl after it's been blocked. And yeah, that brings me to the blanket, to my memory blanket. I haven't shown this for a few weeks, and I've been knitting on this blanket for a very long time. And basically the idea with this blanket was not to get rid of my leftover yarns, but the idea was to knit a square for every sock yarn project that I knit. And basically what I wanted to do is when I finish a project, I wanted to put the square into the blanket and then I could remember the project. But I completely failed in doing so. I did not fail in knitting squares. It's just that the time between finishing the projects and putting in a square was usually really long. So I kept collecting leftover yarns when I finished projects, and then I would knit a whole lot of squares, and then I would start collecting again. And the last few squares that I showed you, that was exactly what I was doing. But now when I picked this blanket up last week, I decided to change my mind, and I decided to change the way I was doing things, and I decided to now put in the colors from the project that I just finished. And I still have the leftover yarns of older projects at home, and I might still add them to the blanket, but I decided I will mix up the old colors and the new colors and try and put in more squares straight away. So the first square that I knit, I put in the colors that I used for my nephew's shorty socks. So I used the tiger colorway from the Rainforest series by Opal. And for the socks, I put in some neon orange. It's the same color as in the cowl, but this is the 6-ply, and the socks and the blanket are done with 4-ply. So these colors won't go into the blanket. But at first I was thinking of doing a neon orange square and then the tiger square. But then I realized that both my orange and my pink leftover yarns were rather small amounts, and I wasn't quite sure whether I would get a whole square out of them. So I decided to mimic the look from the socks. So I did, after the 2 rows of black that I'm doing for this blanket with every square, I did 2 rows of neon orange on this square and 2 rows of neon pink on this square. And then I knit the colorways that I used for the socks. And I thought that was a really funny idea and I really liked it. So that's what I did for those 2 squares. And this square is probably the fastest that I ever put a leftover yarn into this blanket, because this colorway is exactly, let me turn the hat around, is this colorway. So I finished knitting the hat on Saturday and I put in the square yesterday on Sunday. So this was straight away the next day I knit the square from the leftover yarn of this hat, and the other color is black, and I always already have black in here, so I could have done 2 more rows of black, but I didn't think of that yesterday. So this is the colorway that I used for the hat. And then the last square that I started knitting, this is this color from my spiral granny square, and all the other colors that I crocheted into this square, I used up all the yarn I had, especially in the beginning. The leftover yarns, I just wanted to get rid of them, but then I crocheted 2 full balls of yarn into here, so I couldn't put anything in the blanket. But with the last color, I decided after about 3 rounds that it was big enough. By the way, these are 60 rounds of granny square, just in case you're interested. And so I had some left of this color and I started knitting this square last night, and I got really tired and I was wondering whether I should just stay up and finish the square. But then I thought it might be quite fun to see a square in progress, so I put it down at this point and I brought it like this. And you can see now quite clearly that I picked up stitches from this square and from this square, and then I knit 2 rows of black. And then I switched to the color that I wanted to use, and I decrease the stitches in the middle of the square, and I decrease until I only have 1 stitch left, and then I can pull the yarn through and I can start the next square. So if I wanted to continue this way, I could pick up stitches and then I could knit on stitches and I could add a square here, but I won't do that because the width for me is wide enough. But what I will do is I will cast on stitches just onto the needle, and then I will pick up stitches from here, and then I can knit the next square in this direction. And once I have this square, I can go back to picking up stitches for both sides. And I will probably add 2 more rows of squares. So that will give me a blanket that is 10 squares wide. And right now I'm knitting on I'm about to finish the 14th row of squares, and I think if I have 2 more rows, then it's 10 squares to 16 squares. That should give me a nice size of blanket. And one reason I want to finish a blanket is I just started a new blanket and that's my last project for today, and it's for the crochet along that we're doing, where we crochet spiral granny somethings. So what I did with the square was a granny square, but now I started crocheting a spiral granny rectangle, and I'm using this yarn. It's called Regato by Wolle, and it used to be one of my favorite yarns when I still worked at Wolle, so I ended up with quite a few leftover bits of that yarn, and then some years ago, I started crocheting a square out of my leftover yarns, but then my sister saw it and she really liked it. So instead of using up all the leftover yarns I had, I only used the colors that she liked, and I bought some more yarn to put in the square, and she's been enjoying her square for a long time now. Then I still had leftover yarns, but that wasn't enough to make a whole blanket. So I had to buy some yarn, and I was given some yarn by friends. And now I thought I have enough yarn to start my own blanket. And so instead of doing a square, I'm doing a rectangle. So I started with a crochet chain, and then I crocheted those 3 double stitch clusters around it for 1 round. And then I did this mistake to work it into a spiral, and so now I can just work it round and round in spirals, which means that these color bits don't get broken up when I close a round and start a round, and it means I have to pay attention less because there is no beginning and end of round. I can just crochet from one corner to the next and yeah, enjoy the colors. And that's it. That's everything I knit and crocheted last week. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!